Hi, this is Sachi from Icheng Design Studios. This is my first tutorial with Photoshop, and I'm going to sort of split coverage, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Liquify and a little bit about masking. I will go into detail in other tutorials, but this is just to get you started. So here I have a picture. This was taken with a custom wind light and ultra settings in Firestorm. And let me see, if I zoom in here, you can see the rough edges around the nose and also around the chin and neck. And you can also see them here around the bust area. In quite a few pictures of people maybe not too familiar with Photoshop or detail, you'll still see jagged edges and pointy polygons. Part of detailing and making your picture look the best that it can is getting rid of those jagged edges. That is what Liquify is for. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my mask, which is here, quick mask. Let me show you Liquify first. So I'll go to filter and then I scroll down to Liquify. If you're on Windows, the shortcut is Shift-Control-X. I never remember shortcuts, so I always do it straight from the menu. So if I go here to Liquify, this window will pop up. In previous versions of Photoshop, there would be 2 extra buttons here for making a mask. Basically, a mask it's the same thing if you were painting a picture. You could take, if you wanted to make a certain design, or if you didn't want to get paint on a certain area, you would put masking tape over the area and do your painting and then take the masking tape off and it would be okay. So it's sort of the same thing here. In CS6, this has been changed. There are no options here to do it within the Liquify window. So I'm going to cancel out of that. What you do is you go to Quick Mask over here. Keyboard shortcut is Q, and this will take you to a mask version. So for this tutorial, I'm going to focus on the chin and the nose. So I'm going to take my zoom tool and I'm going to click and drag and then use the hand to reposition it. Go back and drag more until I just have those 2 in the window. Now, the reason that I would want to use mask is so that I can fix the neck and the chin without pulling the hair out of place. So what you do now in CS6 is you take your brush. It doesn't matter what color it is or what size. When you're in quick mask, it'll show up red. So adjust the size that you need. I'm going to use that should be good, size 76 brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to let me zoom in for you more. I'm going to try to get as close to the face as possible. Also, make sure you use a hard brush so that it gets exactly that area and doesn't pick up pixels around it. So take your hard round brush, and if you can see how close I am to the face, that's close enough to where if you're looking at the picture from a distance, or even sort of close, you wouldn't notice too much warping or stretching with the hair. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to, as carefully as I can, go outside, just like that. This is less of an issue if you have really dark hair or if you don't have streaks in the hair. But if you have streaked hair or light hair, this is a good idea. So I'm going to zoom out now. And I'm going to come over here. Pick up my brush again and go here. If you have steady hands, you can just drag and swoop. I do not, so I have to make little circles all around. It doesn't change the effect or how it looks. It's just a matter of preference and time. And I won't use a mask here on the nose because there's nothing surrounding it that it'll bother. So if I zoom out, you can see there's red paint here. So there's your masking tape. If you unselect the quick mask, you'll see that it's selected. And I'll zoom in and show you. Those are the areas that you've selected to hide. So if you're on a canvas or a piece of paper, that's where your masking tape would be. So now go back to the Liquify menu and you'll see that it's red again. So zoom in and choose your brush size. I usually just play around with the size depending on what I need to do with the pixels. If there are a lot of little pixels that I need to line up perfectly, I'll use a smaller brush. But most of the time, a big brush is good enough. So usually I'll just play around with size values and the brush size just to find something that feels right. So play around. I don't usually change the brush pressure. So unless you really have a need to, I wouldn't do it. So I'm going to drop this down to 50. And then I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to start here. You can either click and drag to shape it, which I usually don't do because I find I don't like how it looks. Or you can do it this way and you can just take the brush and push everything to line it up. Now the problem with this is depending on the brush size, you may push some pixels out of place, and you'll see here, you'll see how after pushing there are some jagged edges, which also could be a good reason to work with a smaller brush. So I'll drop it down to 40. It's usually quicker to do it in increments of 10, but sometimes an odd middle number will work. If 40 is too big, try 35. So I'll go here to 35 and I'll smooth this out until everything looks smooth enough. I'll come down here. If you like, you can just go over the whole thing. Really what you want to look out for are anything that looks like a triangle. If you look at the lips here, you see how that looks like a triangle and that looks like a triangle. That's what you want to get rid of. So after you fix that, it's a good idea to zoom out and see how everything looks. It still might look a bit square like it does in here. So go back in a little bit closer. You want to get sort of a feel for how it looks at a distance. So you'll have to bump your brush up again. The more you zoom in, the bigger your brush is going to be at a smaller size. So this is at 100% with a size 35 brush. If I zoom in to 300, that's how a 35 brush looks. So try and be mindful of your brush size and what distance you're at. So I'm going to work here. Still not close enough for me. There we go. I'm going to stay at 100, and I'm going to try 50 as my brush, which works. I wouldn't advise using the slider because the values jump up quite quickly. So I'm going here, I'm at 1, which is nothing, to 2251, which you can't even see on the page. So I usually manually type them in. So I'm going to go back to 50. And I'm going to push this spot here so that it doesn't look angular. And now that everything looks mostly smooth, usually I would go and refine it a little bit more, but for time's sake, I'll leave it at that. Now I'm going to go to the nose. The nose is weird because depending on the avatar and the nose shape, you might not have to bother with this area. I've found that I like to shape it, and other times just a quick patch would cover it up, a healing patch or the spot healing. So the main thing you want to keep in mind when working with the nose is that you don't want to change it too much. If somebody took the time to make their shape to have a big nose, you don't want to give them a little pointy one. If someone has a little pointy nose, you don't want to make it wide and fat. So try and keep that in mind. If I zoom in here, you can sort of see. Here, I'll make a smaller brush. You can sort of see a little shadow here, showing the outline of the nose. So what I'll do is I'll just barely go over these areas, just enough to round it out. And sometimes, depending on the angle, you will have to stretch them out a little bit if you're doing a side shot or any sort of angular shot. So I'll push these over and shape them. And I'll spread that out a little bit. Don't worry about any hangover or any discolorations because you can fix those in the normal editing. You'll want to smooth under here to make this look as round as possible. And maybe you can, if you want to, move these shadows up. You can either move them here in Liquify or you can wait and take care of them when you edit. Now, depending on how much you care about detail, at this point, I'll take a smaller brush. Let's try 15. Too big. So I'll try 10. That's a little small, but it's workable. And I'll round out the angles here around the nostrils just so they don't look pointy. You really don't have to, but if you care about that detail and you don't want somebody to look at the picture and go, something looks off, you might want to take care of that. So after that, you'll hit OK. Before I do that, if you make a mistake, if you stretch something out too far or squash it too much, here's how to fix it. I'm going to take a 100 brush and I'm going to smash the lip in. If you like that look, leave it that way. But if you didn't mean to do it, then you'll go here and click the reconstruct tool or just tap R and just go over it and it'll move it back into place where it was before you messed it up. It'll go right back into place. You'll have to reshape it yourself, but don't worry about it being distorted because it'll only go as far as the original shape was. It won't go past it. So if I keep doing this, it won't droop the lips all the way down. It'll just move it back to where it originally was. So now I'll hit OK. And if you go back, you'll see that it's still selected where your mask was. Now, if you do not want to mess up your picture, you cannot forget this. Make sure you turn the mask back on, then click erase to erase the mask. If you do it outside of a mask, you risk erasing your actual picture. Photoshop will really only do things in the area that you've selected them, but if you're wild with the eraser, you could end up erasing the outside. So make sure your mask is on, and if you don't see the red mask paint, don't do anything, is the important thing. So if you look now, you'll see the nose and you'll see the chin. They're both smoother. And that was using a quick mask, just a general basic mask, and Liquify. Now, if I was a good tutorial maker, I would have showed you a before and an after. So what I'll do now is I'll save this. I'll save it as after. And I'll close it out. Now I'll open. That was snapshot 41. I have a lot of snapshots on my desktop, so bear with me. Snapshot 41. Let's zoom in. And I'll place after. Let me just position those. Okay, now I'll zoom in. So you can see the nose and the chin. So here's before. And here's after. Before. After. So another good thing to do before you start is to, and this is good practice anyway, is to always make a copy of your layer before you start working on it. That way if you mess up, you can just delete it and you can still have the original one. And you don't have to worry about messing anything up. So there you go. And I'll show you a little bit further out as well, just so you can see it in context. So this is after. This is after. And this is before. After. Before. And I'll zoom in here where the chin is resting on the hair. This is before, and this is after. And if you look very closely, you'll see that even in the after picture, there's not damage to the hair. There's a tiny bit of, let me draw a little line for you. There's a tiny, okay, that's not a small line. Sorry. Okay. There's a tiny bit there, right here, and right here. And let's zoom in so you can see it. Where the hair looks slightly curved from the Liquify, but you can get in even closer with your mask to keep that from happening. But it's not a huge difference. You won't notice it from a distance. And you have to zoom in to about 400% before you notice it. So here's before, here's after. Not a lot of damage. So I will zoom out so you can see everything in context. And there you go. If you like this tutorial, I will appreciate a thumbs up. If you hate it, don't give me a thumbs down, but tell me why you hated it so I know what not to do for the next video. And I hope you find it useful. Thanks for watching.